Yeah, we're going to be careful because we obviously don't want to get ourselves hurt either. So we'll figure it out and probably try and see if we can get some law enforcement or somebody over here to get this person to safety. So, and we have another vehicle trying to move through right now.
We are seeing how high, excuse me to interrupt you, but we are seeing how high this water, you see that? Yeah, and that's a Hummer.
Yes,
is that a Hummer
and
or is it a Jeep?
The wind is making it even higher.
That is a Hummer.
It looks like it's one of those H2 vehicles. Again, just incredible. We have another vehicle trying to make their way through. We have a truck now. This is incredibly dangerous. This is just unbelievable. There's clearly a vehicle that's stalled out here right in front of them, and they're still trying to make it through. There is nothing going on right now that is so important. You need to put your life at risk and potentially flood out your own vehicle just to get to where you need to go. I mean, this is just so dangerous. And unfortunately, this is probably what the city is going to look like for the next several hours. I mean, it's just so dangerous right now. Please, just don't do this. I mean, you know, just makes me so nervous watching that happen. And, you know, we just have all this wind moving through and the rain. And so, again, if you can, please just stay home because these are, you know, the roads are just a mess right now and it's just incredibly dangerous.
And Charlie happens to be here at this intersection and watching this happen. But how many other intersections like this do you think are there in the Houston area? Well, one of the things that when Travis, Elita, Kevin, others are talking about the storm that strikes me is a little different from some of the storms we get here that cause some flooding, is that it's not, I'm going to not get it and my neighbor's going to get it. Everyone in the Houston area is going to get strong wind and significant rain for several hours, several more hours from right now. Charlie's been there watching this, and we just happened to see cars going by. But Samika, Rita, I was just thinking, how many other intersections are there like this?
Well, and not to mention, you know, if you live in Houston, you know, if you're a Houstonian, if you've been here through many storms, you know that it doesn't take a whole lot. And the story, if you see it, I mean, you see that vehicle, obviously, it looks like they're stalled. But then if you go further up, it looks like higher ground, they would be in a safer location. So, I mean, this is kind of going to be the big story here going forward. Let's send it to Travis right now. Bring us up to speed. I mean, your thoughts as you're watching this, Travis?
Well, those pictures right there show you this is a life-threatening situation, okay? This is a hurricane. And so if you've never been through a hurricane before, don't try to get out on the roadways. What you saw right there is only going to get worse over the next few hours in terms of the height of the water because the rain's going to continue, it's going to get heavier, and the wind is going to get even worse than it currently is right now. So if you look at Beryl, the hurricane has not weakened a smidge since it has made landfall. So it is just as strong now as when it made landfall along the coast. And this is typical of hurricanes that are strengthening on their way into land on final approach. They don't wind down very quickly. I'm going to go wind and rain moving away from the radar in the reds and the yellows and the oranges and the greens and the blues. That's towards the radar. And look at what we're sampling. Now, this is a few hundred to even a few thousand feet above the ground, but these are the kinds of winds that can gust down when you're in those heavy rain bands. The heavy rain pushes those stronger winds aloft down to the ground. And so we are continuing to see significant winds. And the new Centerpoint update just came in, y'all. We've got now just under 1 million Centerpoint customers without power. Earlier when we had 500,000, I said we're probably going to double that. Well, we're probably going to double the million. We're probably going to get to around 2 million or more without power over the course of this next hour because we are having a widespread, significant windstorm in addition to all the heavy rain. We have not had a hurricane of this like this hit Houston since Ike in 2008. Now, Ike was a Category 2 when it made landfall, but this was a strengthening Category 1 making landfall. And with Ike, we were on the west side of Ike across the majority of Houston and Harris County. And typically, you get the strongest winds on the right side of the eye. Well, guess where the eye is? The eye is where you see this little hole, okay? And so all of this is the strongest winds coming in right up to 88, right through Brazoria County, right through Galveston County, right into Harris and Fort Bend, parts of Austin and Waller County. So we are going to see the most significant impacts from Beryl come right on in to the majority of the highly populated areas here of Southeast Texas. Now, when you look at the spin right here, you see everything spinning around so you can make out the eye. But what I want to point out to you is that as we go back down to eye level, okay, so you see the break in in the rain. It's centered right around where Wharton, Fort Bend, Brazoria, Matagorda counties connect. So that's kind of where we're seeing the eyes in this general zone. And so what's going to happen is where you see that arc of very strong rain, this red part right here, that is the eastern eye wall that has just come through western Columbia. The strongest winds in the entire hurricane are going to be right here in this right eye wall. So let's set that in motion, and you can clearly see which way it's tracking, okay? It is tracking northeastward into Fort Bend County. So we are soon going to see the strongest winds the hurricane has to offer coming into the suburbs there southwest of Houston. So Stafford, Missouri City, Meadows Place, Sugar Land, maybe might even get into Rosenberg, Richmond. This is coming your way. It's going to come through Missouri City, and eventually that part of the eye wall is going to come through the western half of Houston. So if you're in Houston right now, the winds that you were maybe hearing outside or perhaps seeing out a window, it's going to get stronger than this. So continue to hunker down. And so the reason I stress this is because this is going to continue to deteriorate. You do not want to go out in these conditions. These are life-threatening hurricane conditions. Regardless of the category, a hurricane is a hurricane, and this one was a well-organizing storm as it was coming in. Thank God it came in when it did and didn't have another day over water. Otherwise, we'd be looking at a few categories higher. So that's the good news there. It's not going to strengthen anymore, but it is maintaining its strength at this time. Now, something to point out when you're looking at these estimated wind speeds, you look on that eye wall where I told you the strongest winds are, and you're saying, well, it's only showing 34 miles per hour. Why is that? Well, that's because the radar beam is going this way, but the wind is going this way. And so when you're perpendicular, when the wind is perpendicular to the radar beam, it can't sample the strongest winds. So it can't really tell how strong those winds are. So what we can do is we could flip over to a different radar source. And in this case, we're going to flip over to the radar source that comes out of Bush Airport. Okay, so this is up in Tomball, Klein area along the Grand Parkway. You may have seen that little pedestal. It looks like it has a golf ball on top of it. That is the terminal Doppler weather radar that services Bush Airport. So what I'm going to do now is sample the winds that it's detecting that are coming basically right at it. And you see now we're getting these 85 mile per hour winds all across Brazoria, Galveston, southeastern Harris County. Now again, these are a few hundred to a few thousand feet above the ground, but when it rains heavily, these are the kinds of wind gusts that are trying to come down. They probably won't get as high as what the radar sampling, maybe 5-10 miles per hour lower than that, but these are the kinds of gusts that will be coming down from time to time, and that is going to continue to knock more power out across the city. So again, this right here is the eye wall that is currently in Brazoria County, southern Fort Bend County, and then you have these feeder bands that are bringing in some very heavy torrential rains. And another thing that we've been keeping an eye on, Kevin and Alita have been reporting on this all morning long, these potential little spin-ups of tornadoes, and where you see these little red marks that start to, let me go ahead and circle one right here, where you see these little red marks and they kind of look like they have a little curvature to them. Those are parts of the rain band that could potentially produce a quick-moving tornado. It's hard to tell because the winds are already so strong, but there could be some quick little tornadoes. Don't be surprised if you go under a tornado warning. But this right now is definitely hunker down time, and so you definitely want to make sure that you are staying safe. So let's go ahead and quickly just review what to do as the core of these hurricane winds start hitting some populated areas. This is tornado safety, but it applies in these kinds of winds as well, where you don't want to be. You want to stay away from the second story. If you're saying a two-story home, you want to get to the bottom level. If you live in a high-rise or an apartment building and you can't get to a lower level, you want to put as many walls between you and the outside air as you possibly can. Now, when you're looking inside of a home or a building, you want to avoid the rooms that touch the outside air. So go away from the windows, stay in that lowest floor. An interior hallway closet or a bathroom, a pantry, those are going to be your safest places to be as you ride this out and that wind is blowing in. And you want to get low to the ground and cover your head if you go under a tornado warning, just in case it's gone through. So that's just a quick review of what you want to do. If you haven't created a safe space where you are right now, go ahead and try to do that just in case. Maybe have some activities there for the kids to keep them kind of distracted and calm. If your furry friends, bring them in there as well. But this is going to be a pretty harrowing few hours here in the city of Houston because, again, we have not experienced anything of this magnitude across the entire city since Hurricane Ike in 2008.
Yeah, and when you talk about the winds that we've seen, that's just one of the many threats. You add on the rain to that, and now you're talking about a very dangerous system. If we can pop up Max 2 here, I can show you what we're looking at across the city, as if you're looking out your window. Live look in Galveston right now. now, the torrential rain, the wind, visibility is way down. The surf is incredibly high there, and the storm surge is a big problem as well. Now, that's a look along the coast, but as you mentioned, Travis, we're starting to see some of those strongest winds along the coast transition farther inland. This is a live look in Houston. It's tough to see what you're even looking at because the rain is so heavy, those winds so powerful as well. This system just getting going. We mentioned the storm surge threat at the Texas City Dike. Let's take a look at how much rain we've seen here. Most of Southeast Texas now under a flood warning. Just about all of us are under a flood watch. Flood advisories ongoing as well. And if we remove some of those warnings and kind of drill down into those areas that have seen the heaviest of the rain so far, you're talking south of I-10, mostly west of the Gulf Freeway. That's where we've seen the bulk of the heavy rain. And you look at some of these rainfall totals, already radar estimated rainfall totals here just south of Angleton at 10 inches of rain. We've got 7 inches farther north. These are the kinds of numbers that we're seeing, and I want to point out that rain is still ongoing. We're not done with the rain. These are the numbers we're already picking up, nearly a foot of rain, Travis.
And you look at that picture we had that Charlie was on, how high the water already was, and to think that we're going to get even more rain coming in over the next few hours. Just incredible. This is definitely a dangerous and life-threatening situation. You want to stay in your safe place right now. Don't try to attempt to get into work. It's just need to stay put right now. This is a hunker down day.
And that was the messaging going into this, was you don't want to be anywhere out on the roads. And now that we're seeing this unfold, we can say without a doubt, you got to stay at home. You've got to wait this out. And things will gradually improve. We're not there yet. But as you start to move into the afternoon, especially the late afternoon, we're going to start to see the core of that system lift farther north, improving along the coast, improving along I-10. But then those areas farther north, our northern viewers, might be getting the worst of it into the afternoon.
Right, absolutely. So this is going to be dynamic. It's going to change based on your location. But for those who are in Houston, surrounding suburbs, this is the high impact zone right now. And in some cases, it is going to get worse, especially where you see that bright red curl just to the north of Angleton. That is the eastern eye wall where we have some of the strongest winds of the hurricane. And that is coming right into eastern Fort Bend County, western half of Harris County. So we got a few hours ahead of us where things are really going to pick up. Now, you notice if you look down, Kevin, towards Galveston County and southeast Harris, you're starting to see some green on the radar. That tells me that the winds may be slacking up a little bit in spots. If you feel the wind slowing down for a time, don't think, okay, the worst is over, we're good now. There's still more yet to come. Everywhere you see one of those red bands of rain, that's where the winds are at their strongest, and we have not yet seen that fully move through Houston and Harris County.
And I think the point you made about the eye wall of that storm, the worst of it, just to the right of that eye, that area where we're not seeing the rain, well, as that eye lifts north, that eye wall lifts north as well. And you can see that clearly just in this 1 hour radar loop. That eye wall is lifting farther off to the north. That's gradually making its way up towards Missouri City, up towards the west end of Houston. And those folks who are already seeing significant rain, significant winds, only going to increase in the next few hours.
Now, what we're going to look for is we're getting hourly updates now from the Hurricane Center. So pretty soon, we should get the new position update. Maybe it just came out. Let's see. Okay, within the next 5 minutes, we will get a new position and strength update from the Hurricane Center. And what we want to see is that pressure to start going up. If we see that number start rising, that's a sign that the hurricane is starting to unwind and the winds are starting to slow down. But since landfall, we have not seen that number budge.
Nope, the pressure hasn't increased and the winds haven't decreased. We haven't seen any weakening yet. We will as it continues moving inland, but we're not there yet. And this is just an incredibly dangerous situation. The wind, the rain, the surge, and the tornado threat. We have seen all of them so far this morning, and we're just getting going.
And in the last report about an hour ago, they noted that there have been 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts in our coastal counties. So we have seen some very significant gusts. That's why we're losing some of the weather data from some of our weather stations, because the power has been taken out, like down in Galveston. We're not getting wind gust data anymore. We saw them around 75 miles per hour, and boom, the power went out. That was a hurricane-force wind gust. And we have also seen the threat of hurricane-force winds increase from the National Weather Service. So when we pull up a certain threat map, I'm going to just pull up Max 3 real fast. What you're going to see is that there's this red zone that has popped up now into southwestern Houston and Harris County. So what we are seeing now, if we can switch the source over to Max 3 so I can show the folks at home, the hurricane force wind part of this has now all the reds that you see that go from the eastern half of Matagorda County through all of Brazoria County, eastern Fort Bend County, and now where you see those reds extending into Houston, Harris County, that's where we're expecting peak winds of hurricane force. And those will likely be gusts more than anything, not sustained winds, but that's a core part of Houston, a heavily populated part of Houston. So all of the neighborhoods and on the southwest side of town, we're talking Sharpstown, Bel Air, Westview, Meyerland, Willow Meadows, Willow Bend, all of these neighborhoods, Westbury to the west side, all the villages, Spring Branch, all included in this zone. And then all the neighborhoods there, all the different wards on the south and east of downtown Houston, or south and west side of downtown Houston, all in the reds, indicating peak winds of hurricane force are expected now that we're seeing where that eye wall is tracking.
And that's it. That coincides exactly with the eye and the eye wall that we were discussing here. Those are the areas we're going to see the worst of the winds, only getting worse over the next few hours. Then gradually, as we move later in the day, later in the afternoon and evening, that's when things will start to improve. We said hunker down, and we mean it. Between that wind and the rain and the tornado threat, there is no reason to be out on the roads right now.
Absolutely. And Kevin, let's go ahead and let's get an update for our viewers here that still have power on what the power is doing. We get an update every 15 minutes. The new one is not yet in, but it's at 966,000 customers without power. Now, when we had the derecho event back in May, we got, I think, over 1.2 million without power. Okay?
And you think we'll surpass that number?
Easily, because we have not yet had the strongest winds come through Houston. When that eye wall comes through, we're going to see the strongest winds yet, and it's going to come through a significant part of the city, and we are likely going to, I would not be surprised, Kevin, if we see these numbers double again and get closer to 2 million customers without power.
Yeah, and this is just such a much longer lasting event than the derecho. That was a quick event. It moved through the city, and then we were done. This is hours and hours and hours of hurricane force winds, as that latest update, I believe, Travis, is just coming out here as we get towards the top of the hour.
That's it, Kevin. Okay, so if we pull up Max Source 3, this has the new numbers from the National Hurricane Center. Okay, we've seen the pressure go up 1 millibar. That's a step. So this right here, that is your eye wall.
And that is important to note. Still hurricane strength at 75 miles per hour. These are still hurricane impacts that are moving into the Houston area at this point.
And you look at the gusts, the wind gusts still potentially as high as 100 miles per hour. So the sustained winds are one thing. Those periodic gusts that briefly get higher, those are the ones that usually do more of the damage. And that's why we have been showing you that potential wind gust map to help you prepare for what is to come.
Yeah, and quite frankly, the modeling right now isn't even capturing how high those wind gusts have been. We've been seeing wind gusts of 80 plus miles per hour along the coast. Those high numbers, those gusts over 80, have been gradually spreading farther and farther inland. We're starting to get into that I-10 corridor. We've seen the
hurricane as well to the north at 12 miles per hour. So what I want to do for our viewers is I want to do a track. Okay, so we're going to do a future track.
So this is something we do typically with the
to the north. So we're going to just put this straight north. And I'm going to actually go a little bit because it's going to start turning to the north-northeast at some point. And this is time to kind of to give you a feel of when you can expect the highest wind speeds to work their way in to your community. So let me go ahead and redo this real fast.
And Travis, I want to welcome everyone in. Top of the hour here, 7 o'clock. Thank you for joining us on ABC 13. We are keeping you up to date on the very latest as still Hurricane Beryl now making its way farther inland into the core of our viewing area in Houston.
Absolutely. And we are here for you. We are going to get through this together. It is going to be a bit rough the next few hours, but we are going to make it through, and we're going to give you the information you need to keep you and your family safe. You look at the track there, Kevin. So right now, the eye wall is expected to move into Greatwood starting in about 10 minutes. Okay, so this is southwest of Houston in Fort Bend County near Sugarland, Rocheron. You are already kind of in the eye wall, but it's going to continue moving your way. The winds will get a bit stronger. Missouri City around 725. Notice this, the villages, Hunters Creek Village around 7:43, Jersey Village around 7:48, Highland Heights at 7:58, Tomball a little bit after 8 o'clock, the Woodlands at around 8 o'clock. So again, that is assuming, I'm so sorry, y'all. Let me redo this because I thought that looked a little off. That seemed way too fast. That was not set properly. So let me go ahead and do this again. So we're going to put it on the eye wall. This is going to show something a lot slower, okay? A lot slower. All right, here we go. All right, so now, here we go. Rocheron, about now. Missouri City, 7:48. The George Bush Park, Barker and Addicks Reservoirs. So if you're out there around Bear Creek, around 8:30. Hunters Creek, 8:50. Jersey Village, 9:18. Highland Heights, 9:45. Tomball, around 10:30. The Woodlands, around 11 a.m. So this is going to slowly trek on through the western half of Houston and Harris County over the next 2-3 hours. These are going to be the strongest winds. We've been thinking that eye was going to reach I-10 around 9 a.m. and it looks like it's on track to do that.
Yeah, and these are areas and communities that are already getting hit hard by wind, and it's important for these people to realize we're just getting started. Those winds will be increasing as that eye wall that Travis tracked, as that lifts north. The winds will be building and increasing. These are already damaging winds, and they're only going up from there. We talked about those power outages. Another update likely coming soon. Next update's going to be up over 1 million people.
Yeah, we're pretty sure it's going to happen. Now, I've zoomed down on the tracking. You don't see the times on here anymore, but I want to zoom down on it just to kind of show you the projected path of the eye wall. It does look like this is going to track right even by us here at the TV station. So this is going to come in through all of Sugar Land. It's going to come in, looks like, through all of Missouri City, Stafford, all these neighborhoods that are between the West Loop and the West Belt, even out to Highway 6 on the west side of Houston. It's going to come through all these communities over the next couple of hours. So we are looking at a significant wind event, again, unfolding across the city of Houston. I know it sounds bad right now. It is, and it's probably going to stay that way, if not get a smidge worse over these next 2 hours.
And Travis, we've got half a dozen reporters out in the field right now experiencing those conditions, helping to show the folks at home what it's like so that they don't have to go out in those conditions. And as we go through the next hour, of course, we're going to see all of those spots from Galveston into Houston, down into the eye of the storm in Bay City, and show you what it's like to be out in the core of this system that is still rotating, still spinning, and still bringing damaging wind, rain, surge, and the tornado threat.
And it does look like the eye is going to track over the neighborhoods on the west side and Katy and some of the suburbs like Sugar Land. And so you're going to notice eventually the wind's going to get really strong, and then it's going to suddenly slow down. And that means the worst is past you. Now, you're going to have one more band of rain come through likely, but it's going to be a thinner band. The winds will not be as strong. We're not seeing the rain as intense right now. So once you get through that eye wall, you can kind of breathe a little sigh of relief. Okay, we've made it through the worst. It's like the big drop on the roller coaster, that first big drop. Now we got a few like little wiggles on the way, and then eventually we will be done with this as we get later into the afternoon, at least for those around Houston and the suburbs around Harris County.
Right. This isn't a fully closed eye wall, so it's that leading edge, that top right corner where we're seeing the worst of it. But once the eye moves through on the back edge of that, you don't have that same intensity that you're seeing on the right flank of the eye of that storm. And you can see it there with our radar. You don't need to be a meteorologist to see what the worst section of that storm is. It's that right side and that northeastern flank where we're getting the worst of the storm.
And just remember, everywhere you see the red colors, that's where the strongest winds are going to be, because that heavy rain is tugging down on those stronger winds. We'll do a little velocity update for you just to kind of see what we're seeing. Still down in the Brazosport communities, the wind is coming straight into the radar beam. So we're sampling, I think, some really accurate, strong winds of around 100 miles per hour. That's a few thousand feet above the ground, but 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts potentially still possible in the heavier rain. 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts still possible in the heavier rain around Galveston. And across Houston, 60, 70, potentially 75-mile-per-hour wind gusts coming in over the next hour.
And Travis, we've got Dr. Michael Brennan from the National Hurricane Center. He is live with us now in Miami to talk about what he is seeing and what we're experiencing here. Dr. Brennan, how are you?
Yeah, good morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with this storm as it's still holding fairly steady strength-wise even as it moves inland?
Yeah, I mean, as you've been talking about the last few minutes, I've been listening in, and yeah, the very dangerous conditions playing out over much of the Houston metro area now with that eye wall onshore. The center still here about 40 miles southwest of Houston, but really strong winds, really heavy rainfall on this east side. And you mentioned, too, the strong winds still occurring on the backside of the center out over the barrier islands there in Brazoria, Matagorda counties. So this is going to be a long duration event. The storm's moving north at 12. We've seen the peak winds come down just a little bit. The pressure start to come up a little. So we're going to see those gradual decrease in the sustained winds. But as you move inland, the gusts become a bigger and bigger factor, especially in these rain bands, especially when you get into areas of like downtown Houston where you have tall buildings, you have funneling, you have elevated exposed areas that are going to see even higher winds than we're talking about here. So as you said, very dangerous situation. People are going to want to be sheltered in place, not just from the wind, but from the flash flood warnings in effect for all of Metro Houston, storm surge warnings in effect for Galveston Bay. The tornado threat's going to be a pretty dangerous few hours coming up here.
And Dr. Brennan, this is Chief Meteorologist Travis Herzog. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I much prefer to talk to you when it's at the Hurricane Awareness Tour ahead of hurricane season, because when we're talking to you during hurricane season, it's usually not a good thing. Now, I know you were at the Hurricane Center during Hurricane Ike, and this looks to be the most significant hurricane windstorm we have had in Houston since 2008. And since then, we've had well over 1 million people move to this region that have never experienced anything like this. What kind of advice would you give them as we're about to see some of the strongest winds that Beryl has left in it coming through the core part of the city of Houston?
Well, you want to be sheltered in a safe place in your home, an interior room. Again, most fatalities from wind and hurricanes occur due to trees falling on homes or falling on cars or people outside, so you certainly don't want to be outside. But we need to talk about post-storm safety. You've been talking so much about how many power outages there are. People are going to be using their generators to stay, keep the air conditioning going, power their house after the storm passes later today, tonight. Make sure you use your generator safely. We lose more people sometimes after a storm due to carbon monoxide poisoning from improperly using a generator than we do during the storm itself. So we got to stay safe here during the next few hours, but we want to stay safe in the coming days while the power is out, safe from the generator use, safe from the heat, and sort of the after-the-storm damage. It can be a pretty dangerous environment in some places for several days.
And Dr. Brennan, one last question for you. Why have we not seen this hurricane weaken as quickly as you'd sometimes expect a hurricane would once it gets over land? It seems like the pressure's been fairly steady ever since it made landfall.
Yeah. Well, it was strengthening pretty quickly right up until landfall. And sometimes when we see storms that are steadily to rapidly strengthening, they sort of carry that momentum and that inertia even after landfall, and it helps keep those winds up. And, this storm is still moving relatively slowly. It's not that far inland. Part of the circulation's out still over the Gulf. And so the winds are sort of, unrestrained out there due to friction. But gradually we'll see those winds come down here, hopefully pretty quickly over the next few hours. But the gusts are going to be a significant threat through most of the day.
Dr. Brennan, we are so grateful for your time this morning and for the entire team, all the work that you've been putting in to predicting this hurricane. It has been a bruiser through the Caribbean. I know it's been a challenge to figure out the landfall point across the state of Texas, but I always say it to our viewers, y'all are the best in the world at what you do, and we are so grateful for what you do for us. So thank you so much for keeping an eye on this storm here for those of us in Southeast Texas.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. And we do have an update on the power outages. You talked about the power outages. Yeah. They're continuing to climb.
Yeah, up over 1 million now, over 1.1 million folks across Southeast Texas without power and still climbing. That's something that you mentioned you expected. It would get up over 1 million. Here we are over 1 million, and we're still maybe halfway through this event. And we expect those numbers to keep climbing.
Yeah, and I was here during Hurricane Ike in 2008, and we got hit by the west side of the hurricane across most of Houston. That is the side that is not the strongest. Well, in this case, even though this is a category lower than Hurricane Ike, we're getting hit by the right side of the storm. So the stronger winds are going to come through Houston. And perhaps in many spots on the west side of Houston, it's going to be stronger than what you experienced during Hurricane Ike. And during Hurricane Ike, Kevin, 98% of the center point network went down. Okay, so I believe that we are going to see these numbers continue rising, probably doubling what we are right now. Wouldn't surprise me if it even surpassed that, because again, we're going to continue to see perhaps stronger winds than some of you experienced during Hurricane Ike coming through the western half of Houston and Harris County, and that's happening over the next few hours.
Okay, well, we can talk about it. I also want to see what's going on outside. We've got our reporters scattered all across Southeast Texas. We want everyone to stay safe. So let's throw it over to the desk here. We've got got Jacob Rascone, we've got Brianna Connor, and we have all of our reporters here at ABC 13 working hard, showing the folks what it's like outside right now.
Doing such great work. Stay safe out there to our field crews. We'll keep you updated right here in the ABC 13 Weather Center.
All right, Travis. All right, Kevin, thank you so much. And you mentioned how a lot of the worst of the rain and the wind is going to move into the suburbs and the city of Houston. Galveston County, however, has already gotten the worst of it. And we're going to be able to be joined right now, I think, by the Office of Emergency Management Director there. Is it
And Beryl hit Matagorda as a Category 1.
So the weather really started deteriorating here about 1 o'clock this morning. Wind started increasing on the west end and east end of the island. The rains came in. And then we started having power outages, street lights were going down in the city. And we still have some pretty significant rainstorms that are hitting us right now.
Okay, and what's your big message right now for your constituents, those in Galveston who may see the conditions lightening up a little bit right now?
So we're asking all the residents and visitors to stay in their shelter, stay at your home. There's numerous lights out, street lights. We still have strong winds. We still have rain, wind-driven rain. And so we're asking everybody just to maintain until at least 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon when we see the last of the rain bands moving in and things start to get back to normal.
Mr. Franklin, have you had any water rescues or stalled out cars or other damage so far this morning?
So we haven't had any water rescues. We haven't got any reports of any stalled out vehicles, not what you guys are experiencing in Houston. Here, being that this is not our first rodeo, it's not our first hurricane down here online, and most of the residents, when we send out our messaging, they know what to do. Yeah. And so we haven't had any of that.
Good. Mr. Franklin, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. We know that what we've seen in Galveston County, we're going to see further inland, but as you mentioned, we don't get it as much as you do. We're not as used to the hurricane force winds. There's plenty we can learn from each other here. It's so good to hear, though, too, that no stalled out cars. Any significant flooding, on any of the streets there?
Harborside Drive has picked up a little water. We've got the wind blowing out of the south, which is in a high tide in the bay. So some of the water's not running off as quickly. But these, are areas where we normally get, standing water because of the volume that falls, the rain total amounts.
Yeah, you guys did such a great job of preparing everyone in advance of this storm. So seemingly now, for folks who are in the area, the places and parts of town that typically flood, the places and parts of town that typically see damage with any type of severe weather event, it sounds like those are the spots that people need to be thinking about as we go through the next couple of hours.
Yes, absolutely. We have done this several times before in the past, and we'll continue. Being a coastal community, this is a big part of what the city does.
They're good at that. It's so good to hear that, at least for now, we know that the sun's just about to come up at 7:15. There may be additional damage that we don't yet know about, but you're watching it so closely. You're so aware of what's going on. We thank you for your time. We want to turn to Brandon Hamilton. He's in the gallery area. The last time we went to him, he couldn't even look up.
Yeah, he was holding on to his hat.
The rain hurts when it comes in like that sideways. Brandon, can you hear us okay? Are you still out there? Looks like the conditions have improved some.
Hey, Jacob, good morning. And Brianna, good morning to you all in the studio. Thankfully, the conditions, as has gotten a little bit better. I know we were talking about that in the broadcast earlier, just as the storm was moving. The conditions, you may think they're getting better, but it's just the storm moving. I want to give you an update. You mentioned the last time you all saw me. So there's this puddling area here on San Felipe. There was a Mercedes that was just stranded here in the middle of the road about 20 minutes ago. And watch this car here. You will see just the water in different spots has been moving. So there was a Mercedes on this end. A tow truck came maybe about 10 minutes ago and hooked the car up and drove it off. So again, that's just telling you there are certain spots on these roads that just you do not need to be out in. You can stay home. It is not worth the thousands of dollars of damage or even totaling out your vehicle just being on these roads. If you do not have to be on these roads, just stay home. So again, that is the conditions here. The rain picking up. The wind, thankfully, has calmed down since you last saw me. As you mentioned, we could barely stand up straight because the wind was just whipping so hard. And again, the message, stay home. You probably saw that car just go on behind me as well. We're San Felipe Stage right outside of the Galleria area. So I'm going to send it, Brianna and
we're going.
Jacob, back to you inside of the studio. That is what we're seeing here so far.
Okay, Brandon. We certainly appreciate that update and your reporting from the Galleria area where it seems like there's a little bit of a lull, but that's just as the storm continues moving. You can see on that radar behind us, we are not anywhere close to out of the woods.
So Travis was telling, while Brandon was talking, I wondered, so it's calmer. Will it get worse like it was before? Travis, you said yes.
Yes, so you're going to see lulls from time to time, and let me show you where that is happening. So I'm going to go ahead and do some drawing on here. Where you see these areas of green popping up, oh, that's the wrong thing. I did not want that. Where you see these areas of green, like right here, okay? That's light rain, so it's not tugging down the strong winds. But once you get into these bands of red, that's where the heavy rain is tugging the stronger winds down. And where you look at this arc of red that's now into Fort Bend County, coming right into Richmond and Rosenberg, that is the eye wall of the hurricane. So just to the southwest of there is where we have the eye. So there's the calmer eye that is now over Needville, West Columbia, Wharton and El Campo. Things are not as rainy there. You're still getting some decent winds, but it's not as strong as it was. But this front right quadrant, as we call it, so you take the motion of the hurricane, and as it moves off kind of in this general direction, this quadrant right here is where you get the strongest winds, and that is what is lifting through Fort Bend County, and that is what is going to lift through western Harris County, and so we are going to see more significant winds. So if you do get a lull, if you are north of here and you experience a lull like Brandon is, it's not going to last for very long. So when we zoom down, look, sure enough, right over the Galleria, see how you're starting to see some of those greens pop up? Well, this red shade that's just inside the loop where we are at the TV station, we can hear it raining cats and dogs, and the wind is just whipping across our aerodynamic roof because we have a dome here in our studio. That is coming straight for Brandon's location. So I have a feeling in a few minutes, he's going to feel that wind begin to pick back up again. And speaking of the winds, we can analyze it in two ways. One is with the radar. So when we look at the radar imagery, it shows us the wind that is going toward the beam and away from the beam. But once the wind gets parallel to the beam, it can't really sample the wind anymore. So when you look at this zone right here where it transitions, that's where the beam is parallel to the wind. So the wind is coming in this way. That's the direction the wind is flowing. And then as it curves around and the beam gets parallel to it, then it can start sampling some of the stronger winds. So when I go now and tap around on this arrow right here to kind of get a feel for how strong things are, now we're seeing these 75, 85 mile per hour winds. Now, this is a few hundred to a few thousand feet above the ground, but where it rains heavily, it tugs down wind gusts like this. And if I go down a little bit more, where you see those deep shades of blue, okay, so that's where the wind is coming straight at the radar beam. And so that's sampling some of the strongest winds over Brazoria County. Look at that, 102 miles per hour, 97 miles per hour. That is the wind coming straight at the radar beam. And so we still have some significant wind gusts to get through before all this clears out. And then the other way that we can sample the winds is directly through instruments. We're starting to lose more and more of them because the power is going out. We're no longer getting reports from Sugar Land, from Angleton, from Galveston. We've got a 67 mile per hour gust on the north side of Houston at Bush Airport, 60 over at Hooks Airport, 63 there between Katy and Brookshire, 60 in Pasadena. So really the strongest winds are aimed right at Houston and Harris County, with 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts being reported by a lot of the local airports reports. The more neighborhood weather stations may not be reporting wind gusts as high because the trees, the buildings that surround things, they slow the wind down a little bit. They add a little bit of friction, and so we usually don't see things getting as strong there. But we are going to continue to see this eye wall work its way north to northeast across Fort Bend County and right on through western Harris County. That is going to be the strongest part of the storm and the strongest winds that we have left to see. So right here, we're going to see it track right in this general direction. That is where we're expecting that eye wall with the strongest winds to come on through here in the next couple of hours. It's moving north at 12, so it's going to be a few more hours before we make it all the way through the strongest winds of this hurricane for those of us that are up in Houston and in Harris County. I understand we have a 13 alert traffic report now from Elisa Rivas. Elisa, what are you seeing out there? I know this is not the time to be out on the roadways.
Sure, Travis. We are seeing evidence of everything you and the weather team have been telling us about here in the last couple of hours. That persistent rain catching up with us now on I-10, the interstate main lanes closing down near downtown. This is an area you're likely familiar with. And actually, Transtar has a project that they are trying to get underway to fix some of this area. This is the area right at the Katy Freeway and Houston Avenue. Let's go back to the previous camera because that really illustrates what's happening. They've moved this camera off of the White Oak Bayou area, and this is what I want to show you. These are going to be the eastbound lanes right before you get to I-45 where you turn off. In the last 20 minutes, I've been watching this. You had most of your main lanes, but here in the last 20 minutes, 15 minutes, we have lost all of those main lanes. Vehicles are barely getting by, and it is a treacherous go. I know we've had reporters out in the field talking about how they're watching people do this. You see the vehicle in front of you moving through the water and still vehicles come behind it. Now, I understand you get out there and you're panicked because the water's in front of you and you can't back up on the interstate, but this is why we tell you to stay home. We are starting to see some of the interstates come underwater, just so much volume, such persistent rain. It can only handle so much, but this is an area familiar to flooding, and it's happening now. I-10 eastbound as you enter downtown is starting to close down right before our eyes. You see these vehicles just trying to get over. They're essentially passing by on the shoulder. And the water, like I said, it's rising fairly rapidly, not going down, not ebbing and flowing. Sometimes you'll see the drainage just stall for a bit so it doesn't get a lot worse. This is getting worse quickly at the moment. So I just wanted to bring attention to that throughout the area. Keep in mind, you'll see the notes there running along the ticker on our screen about the traffic issues that we're having. Ship Channel Bridge on the east side is closed right now, and we're still monitoring the Galveston ferry, which shut down due to weather conditions overnight. So please be aware of these weather conditions. And when we say hunker down, stay home, we really mean it. And this is why even our interstates in some locations now not available to you.
Wow, Elisa, thank you so much for that update. It is stunning to see there is a good number of people out there driving through high water on our local roads and on the interstates this morning. So many of them beginning to be covered over. And we are getting reports from officials saying that trees are coming down. They're out having to do water rescues. So you really have to think about it this morning. If you decide to venture out, there is a risk that you'll just be forcing a first responder to have to come out and save you if you get stuck.
Here we are 3 hours and change after landfall, and more than 1 million people have lost power. And we're about to get, as Travis was explaining, the strongest wind and the strongest rain.
That's right.
In this storm is about to hit the most populous part of the area, the city of Houston itself, much of Harris County, much of Fort Bend County. They're about to get the strongest gusts and the strongest bands of rain are about to come down. Jeff Feeling, one of 5 reporters out for us this morning, driving around. Jeff, I'm not sure. We know you started in Galveston. You were getting it sideways. It was hitting you so hard it felt like bee stings. Where are you now?
Yeah. So we are in the city of Galveston. We're at 35th Street and Avenue O. We had gotten a report of a tree that was in a house, or at least down on a house not too far from here. Haven't found that yet, but we can see, if you could take a look as we drive closer to all this tree debris in the middle of the road right now. I wouldn't be surprised if there are tree limbs down on people's houses right now. Very, very difficult, Jacob, to get around Galveston right now. We're going probably 2 or 3 miles an hour. Right now, as I'm looking down some of these side streets, it looks like those are underwater. We've got tree debris here that we're coming up on right now. We've had very big problems with the phone service down here, also with internet service as well. Power out for what we can tell the bulk of the island. There are some traffic lights that are blinking red, red, but most of them are out. We were on Broadway. I would say probably 50 to 75% of the traffic lights on Broadway were out. A couple of them were blinking four-way stops. But fortunately, there aren't a lot of people out and about right now. And you can see why as we come down this street. This is probably one of the most passable streets that we've found over the last 5 or 10 minutes. Over to the left-hand side where you would get closer to the driveway, that's probably 1.5 feet deep right there. We're heading towards the seawall. That's why the wind's coming right at that camera. It's very tough out there. I tried to send some video back. Okay, this is the 35th and Avenue P&a-half, and the water is up to the door on some of the businesses out here, right, especially right at the corner where it dips down a little bit. No water in any houses that we've seen so far, at least not on this street, Jacob. But getting around town is incredibly difficult. As you know, there was a voluntary evacuation order for West End. We haven't been down there yet. Very difficult to get, I would assume, as soon as you get off the seawall down there. We haven't really had a chance to get down there because it's just been so bad. The last video I tried to send in, it was pretty significant. The water running off, the rainwater running off toward the seawall where it would normally go over the seawall and enter the Gulf of Mexico, the wind was blowing so hard that the water was just being pushed right back toward town, if you will. It was just flying backward. It was a sight to see. I hope that video gets in because it's pretty incredible. As we get closer to the seawall and the road starts to ramp up a little bit, the streets get a little drier in the middle, but on the left and the right you can see, maybe turn down there, Jesus, just so they can see. I don't know if we have to go down there or not, but you can see where the water is. It's right up to the sidewalk level. This is Avenue, you missed it. But we're going to drive down here so you can see a little bit more of what it looks like on some of these side streets down here. Not a good look. But I said earlier, it's the best thing that I can tell you right now is that nobody's on the road. I mean, very, very few people. Maybe you've seen a half dozen cars, and most of those were first responders. So I think people are definitely taking the advice to stay in. I mean, you can't really get out in this. As I mentioned earlier on my last live report, it does feel like the rain is stinging you, even through your raincoat, through your rain jacket, because we're on Avenue R and 34th Street right now. Again, more tree debris right in the middle of the road. You've got not really ditches, the sides, the gutters, I guess is what you'd call it, of this street are underwater, but the middle of the street is okay. The houses themselves are okay. Not enough rain, water to cause any problems with that. But again, as you can see, as we come up, here is a car coming through right there. There just isn't a whole lot of, aren't a whole lot of good ways around Galveston right now. The wind coming through here is pretty significant. You get these wind tunnels created by these large streets that go through. This is the 33rd Street right now in Avenue R. And as we pull into this, the wind's just coming straight at us in the classic bands of rain. Falling down. The road is almost entirely covered in water. The middle of the road's a little bit dry, but this is what we've been dealing with, Jacob, now for, maybe since about 4 o'clock, 4:30 this morning, so a good 3.5 hours now into sort of the worst of it, if you will, for Hurricane Beryl. We're going to get up on the seawall here. Hopefully we get a little bit of a view of the Gulf of Mexico, as you might imagine. It is very turned over. There's a palm tree that's down on the ground, and then these cables. That's the other thing we've got to be very careful for. The power lines, some of these phone lines and internet lines are really taking a beating out here. And as we go around through town, most of the power that we've seen is off as well. So we saw some transformers, what looked like transformers blowing out. Now, we were up in front of the San Luis, if you're familiar with the Galveston area, and on both on the left-hand side and right-hand side, transformers popping, all over the place. I don't know if you can see out there or not, but this is our shot now, the seawall and the Gulf of Mexico. Very turned up, guys. Very turned up right now. It's 33rd Street and seawall.
Okay, extensive coverage, Jeff. We certainly appreciate it. Glad to see you guys taking it slow, staying safe, and also happy to see there's not a lot of people out there moving around Galveston at this hour with the storm having such an impact. We want to reset right now at 7:30 on this Monday morning. Hurricane Beryl made landfall as a Category 1 overnight in Matagorda.
Yeah, the most intense rain, the most intense wind, as Travis was saying, is actually about to hit Houston, the city of Houston, also parts of Fort Bend County, and we have now 1.1 million people without power. Travis said, because we haven't seen the wind, the strongest wind hit some of our more populated areas, he expects that to double. Rachel Breyer is also here now. Rachel, we've seen a lot of rain, and not just today, but that's on top of yesterday.
Yeah, a lot of rainfall. Some of these totals we've seen over the last 12 hours in themselves are extremely high. That's why we are looking at a lot of flooded roadways. Again, do not get out and drive. I mean, we are looking at a lot of flooded areas. It is not a safe condition. And in addition to that, when you factor in the wind, your visibility, it is greatly reduced. And also from experience, coming in over the last few hours, there are still tree branches, things just getting flown across the street. Now, I do want to show you our rainfall totals, though. This is estimated according to our radar. Estimating in the southern portions of Harris County around 5 to 6 inches. Get closer to Angleton, seeing pockets even possibly over 10 inches of rainfall. Now, I also want to show you what we have coming in from the flood control district, because these are actual numbers we have. Here are some of the highest ones I have found. You can see over towards Brays Bayou at Stella Link Road, 5.5 inches of rainfall. And yes, more is even on the way. And then over towards, right around Highway 90, over 6 inches of rain. As we push down to the south along 288, also seeing numbers coming in close to 5.5 inches. So that in themselves, high rainfall totals already. And like we were saying, more is going to be pushing on in from the south, lifting up to the north, especially as that eye wall continues to lift up to the north as well. So that's a closer look at your bayou and creek flood status. Now let's take a couple looks at, some problem spots here. We do have a few of our bayous and creeks that have actually overtopped their banks. One of them, South Maid at Greenhouse Road. We also have one over towards Buttermilk Creek and Moorberry Lane. Another one right along Spring Branch. Keegan's Bayou at Rourke Road, right along 59, seeing out of those banks there as well. And then we also have a cluster closer, a little bit getting closer to League City. So I'm going to walk you through a few of these problem spots here. Current water level at South Maid at Greenhouse Road that we just looked at. Over the last 24 hours, about 4.5 inches of rainfall. Flood status, likely. The current level coming in to about 2 feet over where it should be. And then over towards the Houston Ship Channel at Wansagine Park, flood status also likely last 24 hours receiving over 5 inches of rainfall. And then the last one I'm going to show you here is Clear Creek at Bay Area Boulevard, also looking at flooding likely about 5.72 inches of rain. And more of that rain is just going to continue to build in. So stay off those roadways. Let this go ahead and pass. We're going to start to see things get a little bit more manageable as we get closer to the midday period. So obviously we are dealing, with the flooding threat, but we also have to talk about a wind threat, because that's really what we're dealing with this system, flooding and also those high winds. And for more on that, let's head back over to Travis.
We're going to, Rachel, thank you so much. We're going to get to Travis in just a moment, because Galveston County Judge Mark Henry is now able to join us. And we just saw, thank you, Judge, for joining us. We just saw Jeff Feeling, our reporter there. He was driving around the streets. He saw some broken off, tree branches, large ones. He saw some flooded roads. What are you hearing about the conditions, if everybody's okay, how the power situation is out there?
The power situation is we have outages all across the county. My last count was 12,000 customers without power, but that's not including CenterPoint. They're not reporting, so it's going to be much more than that, probably double that. So we do have lots of wind. Our concern right now is that high tide is in about 30 minutes. High tide coupled with the water being pushed onshore is probably going to create some flooding. And then the ferry service was suspended this morning at 2 a.m. and Highway 87 is impassable on Bolivar Peninsula. So if you're on Bolivar, just stay inside. You can't go anywhere anyway. And that's kind of good advice for all the rest of the county as well.
We also know that Galveston County is so resilient. This is not anything that folks who have been there for any amount of time are unaccustomed to. But what message do you really want to get out there for your constituents, Judge?
Like I said, stay indoors. There's absolutely no need to be outside unless you're a first responder. And even those guys and gals are having a hard time getting around right now. So stay inside. The storm, as you have reported, is moving fairly quickly. It'll be out of here in a couple of hours, and we can go to a damage assessment and getting life back to the way it was on Saturday.
There was an emergency shelter, we understand, in Lamarck, I believe. Do you know, did anyone go? Was that used? Is everybody okay?
To my knowledge, nobody used the shelter, but I will double check on that and let you know.
Yeah.
And we also know that this storm has been so interesting to watch how it's developed, how it's moved. There have been changes. But as far as what you guys were expecting in terms of impact, are we seeing what you guys thought would happen?
Yes, it's probably everything we were concerned about. And this is a 3-threat storm. It's been freshwater rain, it's been coastal storm surge, and it's been high winds. So it's all 3 things that a hurricane can be. We've been preparing for it for about a week, but we were hoping to make a turn and it didn't. So here we are.
Having been through many systems before on the island and now the worst of it having already passed, at least as far as the winds are concerned and some of the rain, as you mentioned, we still have high tide. When do you expect that those who don't have power will get it back and that the streets that are flooded will not be flooded? In other words, how long will it take, do you think, for it to get back to somewhat normal on the island?
The normal floodwaters will recede within an hour or two after the rain stops, so that won't last that long. Unfortunately, the widespread power outages in the region are going to have to be handled by the electric companies, and they're going to have millions of customers to deal with. So I'm sure they're going to work as hard and as long as they can, but in some cases, I doubt that gets restored today or even tomorrow. It might be a couple of days.
Makes
okay,
sense.
Judge, we certainly appreciate it, and we will be keeping an eye on Galveston County, especially, like you said, in the next 30 minutes or so when we're expecting high tide to come in.
Let's get back over to Travis Herzog, Chief Meteorologist. Travis, when we last talked to you, you said that the most intense rain and wind was about to hit some of our most populous areas.
It is. It's happening right now across Fort Bend County and soon into the western half of Houston and Harris County. So I've got some things to show you here, a future track that I've got as well. This is the radar, 13 alert radar loop, and you can see the cleared out eye that's now over parts of Brazoria and southern Fort Bend County. So those of you in Meadville, if you've still got the power on, you've noticed things have calmed down. There's still one more part of the eye wall to get through, but it will be not as strong as the one you have just experienced. So zooming down, there is the eye, that open circle that you see in the radar imagery. And then this right here is what we call the eye wall. Right? That's the ring of storms right around the calmer eye. And that's where you get the strongest winds in a hurricane. And in this case, it is the right side of the eye, or the east side of the eye wall, that has the strongest winds. It's the so-called dirty side of the storm where you get more of the impacts. And then we have these bands that are arcing in off the Gulf of Mexico. Torrential downpours here, and wherever you see those little spinning arrows, that's a sign that there could be a brief spin up of a tropical tornado. But the reason I point out the heavy rain bands is because that heavy rain draws down stronger winds. So you see the maximum winds in that eye wall are expected to be at 75 miles per hour. That is a steady, sustained wind. The gusts are up to 100, and we're starting to get more and more reports of damage coming in from these winds. We got a report around Bunker Hill Village. A large tree is down near the intersection of Wickchester Lane and Kirkwood. That's just west of Bunker Hill Village. And we also have a report that in League City, there's a metal light post down on a vehicle in a parking lot near the intersection of I-45 and Highway 96. So when you have trees and when you have light poles that are falling in these winds, that's going to eventually hit some power lines, and that's why we're seeing those power outage numbers climb so significantly to well over 1 million customers. And Kevin, if you could work up the latest update, 1.1 million customers right now. Okay, I do expect that number will continue to rise as this eye wall works its way across western Houston and Harris County. This is a sampling of radar wind. So this is when the wind is going straight at the radar beam. It's getting us the strongest sample of wind, and we're seeing this 75, 85 mile per hour range over Fort Bend and Harris counties, and it's been 85 to 95 is what we've been seeing over southern parts where the blue is in Brazoria and Galveston County. So let me go ahead and do a fresh new round of numbers, because those are when I was tracking it a little bit earlier. I want to get some kind of samples. So there we go, 101 miles per hour just to the east of 288 and the Brazos Port communities. And where you start seeing these oranges popping up around Houston, Harris County, those are 75 to 85 mile per hour winds that the radar is sampling. Now that's what's going straight at the radar beam. So when the wind turns, it's not going to be able to see it when it's perpendicular to the beam. So I can also sample from other radars that we have available in our 13 alert radar network. Right now, we'll go ahead and look at the one that's coming out of Bush Airport, see what it is sampling. And this radar beam actually samples lower to the ground. And so when you see these numbers, these are closer, an accurate picture of what you may get when it comes to some of those wind gusts. And it's picking up a lot of 70 to 85 mile per hour winds, a few hundred feet off the ground. So when you get into the heavier rain bands, that rain starts to push some of that momentum to the ground, and you're going to get gusts near that level. So that's been the concern about this significant windstorm of this. It is the most significant wind-driven hurricane event we have had across southeast Texas since Hurricane Ike in 2008. This is much stronger than Nicholas was. Nicholas was also a lopsided storm that mainly impacted our coastal counties and southeast Harris County. This one's coming all across Houston and Harris County. And I actually believe that this is going to probably produce stronger winds across the city than what Ike did. Even though Ike was a category higher, most of Houston and Harris County got hit by the left side of the eye wall, not the right side, which in this case is the stronger one. And so I do believe it's producing even stronger winds. Getting back down there into eye level, you can see things have cleared out. We're probably getting the winds picking back up in Bay City and Blessing, Matagorda County as the rain is wrapping around the southern part of the eye wall. But when you look at it, just look at it here, most hurricanes, when they come into Texas, have this long side that extends out from the eye. About 150 miles is usually what you get. And then west of the eye, you're maybe looking at 50 miles of impact before you get out of the rain and the wind. So once this eye lifts on through, we're going to see things rapidly begin to improve this afternoon. But all of you that are north of Houston, you still got the power on in Conroe, maybe up in the Woodlands, Lake Livingston, Huntsville. This is all coming your way. And while the storm will not be as strong, it may be as 5 to 10 miles per hour slower than what we are experiencing right now across the I-10 corridor down into the coastal counties. This storm is not going to unwind very quickly. Now, I do want to show you some of the winds that we are sampling from what weather stations still have power. So we've knocked out the power in Edna, in Palacios, Angleton, Galveston. All of those are recording winds gusting 75 to 85 miles per hour. Around Houston, the airports that still have the power on are showing wind speeds gusting. Look at Hobby Airport now, a 71 mile per hour wind gust. So for the neighborhoods around Hobby Airport, you're getting 70 mile per hour winds. We actually have a camera from Hobby. I'm going to pull up real fast just to get a visual. Oh, looks like the power went out because it is gone. So never mind on that one. So we are again seeing the power beginning to go out more and more across the city. I think that is going to continue over these next couple of hours as this tracks its way on northward. And let's go to our Galveston camera just to show you the visual of what's happening there. You can see the water looks like it is all the way up to the base of the seawall. The wind is rocking. The waves are looking very furious. And we're approaching high tide. So those storm surge tide levels will be increasing here in the next few hours. And all of this, again, is tracking through with these significant rain bands continuing for several more hours. So we still have a ways to go for most of you that are listening to my voice right now, a ways to go before this begins to wind down. And I do want to do that future track. I thought I'd saved it, but since I didn't, for those I promised you I'd show you this. This is a track of where the eye wall is going to go. And then eventually you get into the calmer eye, but it's going to lift in this kind of northerly direction. And just to give you a feel for those of you that are up north and not yet experiencing the worst impacts, this is what you can expect. It's moving through Missouri City here in the next few minutes, into Manville around 8:30, Jersey Village around 9:30, downtown Houston around 9:45. So when the eye gets to I-10 around Katy at 9 a.m., we're going to have the strongest winds the storm has left to offer right over all of Houston and Harris County. Magnolia 10:41, the Woodlands 11:23, Conroe around 12:30, Willis around 1 p.m. Meteorologist Kevin Roth and Alita Loreska have been doing a great job covering the storm for us in the wee morning hours till now. Kevin, I see you coming up beside me. You look a little anxious, like you got something to say. What are you seeing right now?
Just got the latest update on those power outages. You mentioned 1.1 million, and you expected that to climb. Well, just in, it is now over 1.3 million folks across southeast Texas now without power. And as you mentioned, the true core of that storm, the eye wall, the strongest portion, what remains of that storm, still lifting farther north, really into the core of our viewing area.
Yeah, when we had the derecho back in May, which hit a much smaller part of town, we had 1.2 million power outages around there at the peak. And we're already surpassing that with the strongest winds yet to come. So I expect that this is easily going to climb over 2 million, may get closer to the 3 million mark. When we had Ike come on through, if you were not here in 2008, we saw power go out across 98% of CenterPoint's network. So most people went offline, at least for a time, and in some cases it took up to 2 weeks to get the power back. I seriously hope it doesn't take that long in this situation because this hurricane is a category lower than Ike was, but I am concerned that we're seeing slightly stronger winds because of where Houston is relative to the eye in this hurricane versus that hurricane.
Yeah, and to compare it to the derecho, which was not nearly as widespread of an event as what we're seeing here, we're dealing with those tropical storm and hurricane force winds all throughout southeast Texas right now and still building farther inland. So if you're north of I-10 and you haven't seen those strong winds yet, they're still coming as that outer wall, those bands start moving in. That's when those winds really start to increase, as you've been mentioning.
Yeah, and so we are seeing the streets fill up with water and debris. This is not the time to be out on the roadways. This is a hunker down day. We've seen vehicles stalled out. We're seeing people putting their engines at risk of drowning, and even worse, putting themselves at risk of drowning. Avoid the underpasses. If the side streets are filling up, the underpasses, which we dig down 10, 15, 20 feet, like around the I-10, the Katy Freeway, around 59 and 610, the West Loop, those are the places where people get in real trouble and put their lives at risk. Now, if we could pull up Max 2, Kevin's got a graphic up right now, just to give us a feel for the future radar that we are expecting, how much longer we're going to have to deal with this rain and these extremely strong winds.
Yeah, this is primarily a morning event, Travis, and as you start to move into the afternoon, the system lifts. Beryl keeps lifting, gradually weakening. We've seen some slight signs that Beryl is weakening, though still a hurricane now. As you move into the afternoon, the core of that storm lifting farther north of I-10 and south of I-10, some of those coastal regions that have been hit the hardest, they clear out first. In and around Houston through the mid-afternoon, I expect we're mostly dry. This is what it looks like at noon, and you can see the bulk of the storm at that point in our northernmost communities.
And you look at the direction it starts to take. It starts to tilt a little more northeasterly, should pick up speed during the day, so that'll get the impacts out of here quicker. But when you look at where that eye wall is tracking, I mean, that's all across Houston and Harris County, all across Montgomery County, up to Huntsville, Walker County, the counties around Lake Livingston, just a tremendous wind event that's going to be pushing through southeast Texas as the day wears on. Over my shoulder, I see Rachel Bryers at the weather wall looking at some of our regional tower cams. Things are really rocking around down there from the Texas City Dike down to Galveston. Lots of rain coming down in Houston and Lake Conroe. What are you seeing right now, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I started pulling these up just to kind of get a better feel, and it is pretty wild to see how some of these are rocking. I want to show you, especially the Texas City Dike. I mean, look at the camera there. You can definitely see, you know, those piers, you can still see them, but barely. And then in Galveston, same picture. I also want to really hone in on Houston as well. So I'm going to blow this one up even larger here and just look at that rainfall coming down. This is why we are telling people not to get out on the roads. One, it is raining so heavily it's hard to see, but when you factor in the wind in itself, it is really just making visibility extremely hard. And in that case, when it comes to driving with lower visibility, a lot of these roads are flooded as well, and you definitely don't want to get caught in that sort of situation. We have multiple flood warnings in effect, you know, stretching up all across Harris County, all the way down to our coastline as Beryl continues to lift slowly up to the north, and still just heavy rainfall across portions of southeast Texas, especially though into Harris County. So Houston really starting to get the brunt of that heavy rainfall, and like Travis was saying, starting to see those winds elevating themselves in general. So I want to break down how much rain we have actually seen so far. Over the last 12 hours, radar estimated rainfall totals coming in anywhere between 3 inches to even closer to 10 inches as you get closer down to the south. Conroe, you have not seen a whole lot just yet, but eventually this will lift to the north. We're going to continue to see those high rainfall totals from Conroe, Huntsville, Livingston, as well as over into Liberty. But across Harris County, within the inner loop, within the 610 loop, we are seeing numbers coming in closer to 4 to even 5 inches. You can see the Harris Gully at South McGregor Way coming in over 5 inches. Brays Bayou at Stella Link Road coming in close to 5.28 inches of rainfall. And some of the highest rainfall totals I'm seeing from the flood control district are actually down in the Sienna area, over towards Flat Bank Creek at Sienna Springs Drive, coming in at 6.36 inches of rainfall. And then also the Mustang Bayou at State Highway 288, 6.4 inches of rain. So that in themselves, extremely high rainfall totals. And more of this rainfall is going to continue to lift up to the north. It does also look like we have another warning coming out, another tornado warning. It looks like just over towards Bolivar Peninsula in High Island. So I'm going to send that back over to Travis for more information.
Yes, we just had this tornado warning come down. This is in one of those outer rain bands that is crossing right over Rollover Pass. So the Bolivar Peninsula, we are seeing radar indicated rotation. And these types of fast moving tropical tornadoes are possible in this outermost rain band. This is what came through the city of Houston already. So if I draw a line on this is the rain band. If you are in this near this white arrow, you could possibly get a quick moving tropical tornado. As it stands, this warning right now is for primarily Chambers County and Galveston County. So the Bolivar Peninsula is Galveston County, and then all the way into Chambers County, a rural part of the county at that. It's radar indicated, and I'll put it in the velocity mode to see what we're seeing in terms of any spin going up. So you kind of see how there's these bright greens and then these lighter greens. Now, normally in a severe thunderstorm, we talk about the reds and the greens coming together. But in a hurricane, everything's moving so fast in the same direction. You look for these subtle differences that show a difference in color. So this is kind of the location of the circulation that we are seeing. That is going to be lifting northward right across the Bolivar Peninsula. This is east of Crystal Beach, but in the vicinity of Rollover Pass and Gilchrist. So a potential tropical tornado in addition to the strong winds that are already coming in. So we're going to continue to do a little bit of analysis here as the eye continues to track its way through Fort Bend County. That eye is now beginning to work its way closer to the eye wall, closer to Katy. So those of you in Katy, if you still have the power on and can hear my voice, you are experiencing some very strong winds that are rolling in. They've just come through Missouri City and Sugar Land, and this is what's coming into the neighborhoods on the southwest and west side of Houston, where you see that arc of red. That is the eye wall of the hurricane, where you get the strongest winds rotating through. So think of the strongest winds you've had so far. They're probably going to get 5 to 10 miles per hour stronger than that. So continue to hunker down, and then once that lifts on through, you're going to notice a break, and that break is going to last for about 1 or 2 hours, because the eye, if you're right in the middle of it, the eye is about 20 miles wide, and it's moving to the north at about 12 miles per hour. So you'll catch a break. That's not really the time, though, to go outside and get on the roadways. That's the time to recollect yourselves and get ready for one more pass of the eye wall that's not as strong and a little more rain before things start to improve once we get to the afternoon. Jacob, Brianna, we'll toss it back over to you as we continue to update our graphics and do some more analysis.
Thanks so much, Travis.
Such good information. We're listening in our ears. The producer was telling us, Doug Schertz in the newsroom monitoring, among others in this huge team we have. Doug, what are you watching right now?
Simon's desk this morning, busy up here at this point, monitoring information about a house fire that occurred earlier this morning. That fire breaking out just after 5 o'clock this morning in southeast Houston. Unfortunately, Houston Fire Department now reporting to us that this is a fatality house fire. It's on Bendel. The 8100 block of Bendel near Bliss. This is in southeast Houston, just off of Howard and the Gulf Freeway, Bonner Elementary in that area there. Older residential section of southeast Houston that's been in existence for many, many decades. It looks to be, looking at the maps there, this looks to be a one-story residential home that caught fire earlier this morning. The fire department out investigating at this point. It is totally unclear if this is weather related, if this had anything to do with the storm or anything to that effect. Obviously under investigation, but confirming a fatality to an adult female at this location. We do have a crew en route to head to that location, get some more details of what's going on, and we'll bring that to you as soon as we can.
All right, Doug, thank you so much for that update. So we do know that was a deadly house fire, as he mentioned. Not sure right now if that's related to this weather, but we do know we're getting reports all around town about trees coming down. We know that's particularly dangerous for folks who are out and about on the roadways, perhaps. We know trees have fallen into people's homes. We had so much rain starting yesterday, and now really this deluge that we've experienced since the overnight hours, really loosening those roots, making it a really dangerous and possibly deadly situation outside.
It is still so bizarre to look and to see a hurricane over the Houston area, still hurricane strength. And right now we have some breaking news into the newsroom. Deputies investigating a possible storm-related death up in Atascocita. I believe, are we able to go now to Courtney Carpenter? Is that right? Courtney Carpenter in Fort Bend County. Okay, she's in Sugar Land. Courtney, we understand that the strong wind and rain is about to hit where you are.
Hey, good morning to you, Jacob and Brianna. Yeah, I want to just keep an eye on things for you guys here in Fort Bend County. This is Country Club Boulevard. We're right near Sugar Creek Country Club, which is really not far off of 59. We stopped here, just wanted to show you. I mean, obviously this is a neighborhood and kind of a low-lying part of it, but you can see the water's coming up, over the curb at this point. This is at Country Club Boulevard near Montclair. That's where we are right now. And yeah, we've been really all over from Richmond. We were over on Lexington in Missouri City just moments ago. We did see a tree on a house over there. I know Travis earlier was mentioning, yeah, we're starting to see trees on homes, trees falling, power lines falling. And we did see a couple of power poles, the poles themselves falling, which is never a good sign because we know that obviously takes longer to get back up and to repair. The folks in this neighborhood are certainly out of power as well. But now that it's getting brighter, you're able to see a little bit more of it. But I would say most of the street lights that we came across, most of the stoplights are out. A lot of folks, as you mentioned, more than 1 million people now out of power. And a lot of folks down here in the Fort Bend County area, we've noticed out of power earlier, seeing lots of transformers blow, but now really just rolling around, being careful, of course, but checking out some of these high water spots for you guys. And I will say, good news down here is it seems most folks are staying off the roads. A lot of places are closed down, which is what officials have been asking for. So that's the good news here. But yeah, this is the latest here from here near Sugar Creek Country Club here in Sugar Land. We'll send it back to you guys.
Hey, Courtney, I want to ask you a quick question. I know last time we checked in with you, you were in Missouri City. Highway 6 is really the main vein that gets you from Mo City out to the Sugar Creek area there in Sugar Land. You mentioned the intersections having lights that were out. Any other major impacts on 6? Because we know that's a pretty busy route typically.
Yeah, I will say a lot. We noticed a lot of damage on Dulles I would say Dulles and Lexington. Lexington really did have a lot of trees down. We didn't see, thank goodness, really any structural damage. Even the tree that we saw on the home over on Lexington, it seemed to be leaning against it. It was hard to tell if it had gone through the roof or not, but it wasn't just through the home. Sometimes we see that kind of thing. So we haven't seen anything like that as far as big structural damage, but a lot of trees down. And big old limbs. I mean, ones you're having to go in the other lane to get around, not just ones that you can drive across. So I would say that's the main thing. We saw that one power pole down and several telephone lines that were dangling. So without a doubt, I mean, throughout the morning, there's been, as Travis and all the meteorologists saying, I mean, just really, really strong gusts of wind come through here. It's really, comparatively speaking, very calm now. But that's what I would say are the major things we've seen so far. And just, yeah, most every stoplight we've come across has been out so far.
All right, Courtney, we appreciate your reporting. Stay safe out there. Thanks so much.
Good information. We were trying to answer people's questions who are wondering, when is it going to rain the hardest and have the worst wind where I live? And what kind of damage can 50 to 60 mile an hour sustained winds do? We've shown you, we had Jeff all around Galveston. We had Courtney there, Fort Bend County. She's been in and out. And then we want to show you up in North Houston, Charlie Etzedy has been driving around and stopping in locations there. Charlie, the last time we saw you, there was someone who drove into the water.
Some positive news to share with that driver. She is okay, and she did actually end up getting out of her vehicle, and she was standing near myself and photojournalist Charles Fisher waiting for a tow truck to arrive. And so I would say maybe about 15, 20 minutes later, that tow truck did show up. And so at that point, she got back in her car and was able to get some help. So some good news there, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like her car was running anymore. And so that's the danger, and that's the risk you take when you attempt to drive through some of the conditions that we've been showing you all morning long. And so we are about a block or two down the street on Little York near Shepherd. And so we just want to give you a look at some of the conditions that we're seeing over here. So to give you some perspective, we're right next to the Joe V's Smart Shop, the grocery store. And it looks like there's several vehicles in that parking lot, actually. But the road right in front of us, we just keep watching the water continue to rise and rise and rise several inches. We have been seeing some traffic slowly coming through here, but obviously not advisable because the flooding conditions that we've seen on the roadways just continues to get worse. And so one thing that we have noticed, myself and photojournalist Charles Fisher, is that we are seeming to get a little bit of a break from the wind, which is great because we have been getting pelted by just these strong gusts of wind, just nonstop for like the last hour or so. And as I say that, the wind is starting to pick back up again. And so you can see we do have some drivers that are still out here tempting fate, really, trying to make their way to wherever they got to go today. But we've been watching also this vehicle in the middle of the intersection, person inside of that white car. We haven't approached them, but it looks like they are stalled out, can't get out of the intersection there. And so, unfortunately, a lot of drivers in that same situation, and I just cannot stress enough how incredibly dangerous that is, because you never know how quickly the water will rise around you. And, so we just, again, are trying to advise people, if you can, please stay home and just stay inside. But yeah, it's pretty rough conditions out here. And one thing of note is that I feel like the direction of the wind just keeps on shifting and changing. I mean, on one hand, I feel like we're able to block some of it with our vehicle, but then I just feel like it just changes direction, and then we're getting pelted in the face with all of the rain out here. And so one thing that we noticed, we're underneath an overpass here. I'm not exactly sure which road this is, but one thing we noticed when we pulled under is that we saw some pigeons, some birds that were sheltered underneath the overpass here. And so Charles is going to pan over, and you can see there's several birds hanging out underneath this overpass. Obviously, they're staying safe, sheltering during this weather, because clearly they can't fly or move around during this either. And so looks like the wind is starting to pick up right now. We're getting several very strong gusts of wind, and it looks like we have this white vehicle here that's trying to make its way through the water. Not a good idea. We've seen so many people doing this all morning long, and you just really cringe and kind of hold your breath, because you don't know if they're going to make it through, and you hate to see somebody getting stuck and then obviously in a position where they have to get some help and get rescued. And then that vehicle is followed by HPD patrol car. And so we got some big gusts of wind rolling through here, so just give us a second here. Heavy wind in this area. And so, our first responders obviously incredibly busy, and it looks like this officer is trying to see if somebody inside this white car is in need of help. And so this is what our first responders are up against. I mean, not only the awful weather conditions, but then also trying to provide assistance to some of these drivers who are just literally stuck in the middle of the road. And so, we're just going to kind of sit here and see what happens with this officer and this driver. But we've seen, I think, at least 3-4 vehicles that are coming down. And so there's no telling how long some of these drivers are having to wait before they can actually get some help. And so I see a vehicle here stopped right under the overpass here. They got their window down. I'm going to go see. I'm going to walk over and see if they're willing to talk to us. Give us an idea of what it's been like for them driving around the city here. And Charles, I don't know if the microphone will reach this far, so just shout at me if I need to move back.
This is the second time, by the way, as you're watching, that Charlie has done this, where somebody right next to her
Are y'all okay?
appeared to stall out. Let's see.
I'm with ABC 13. We're live on the air right now. Just talk to me about what has the driving conditions been like out here on the road.
Man, this shit going on out here, man.
Say it again?
This shit going on out here.
Okay. Watch your language. Watch your language, please. So, I mean, what has it been like trying to drive around?
Man, it's flooded, man. Your car gonna be all in the front of the water and stuff like this. It's hard out here, man. Y'all need to get in the highs if y'all outside, though.
So how far away do you live? I mean, are you...
I'm down the street. I'm trying to get so deep, I can't even get nothing to eat. I'm trying to eat something.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to find anything because everything's closed. So, I mean, what's the plan now to try to get home?
Time's trying to go back home. It's bad out here now.
Yeah.
It's really bad out here.
Yeah.
It's time to go home.
All right. Well, sir, thank you so much for talking. Be safe on the roads. Yeah. Thank you.
Charlie, thank you for doing that. 8 o'clock in the morning when Hurricane Beryl is hitting is not the time to go get something to eat.
That was so scary.
To be in. So, of course, we're going to be as careful as we possibly can while we continue to cover this for you. And And so with that, I'm going to toss it back inside to you guys. I think I lost my IFB.
Okay, we certainly appreciate you, Charlie. That is just, your heart starts beating as you start seeing people trying to make it through these kinds of conditions. Like you just heard, trying to get something to eat, that's quite a risk when you're dealing with the rain and the wind. And I do want to get you an update. We're looking at close to 1.4 million customers without power in and around the city of Houston. We are one of those customers this morning at ABC 13. Our lights have gone out. You're still getting our signal, so we are still here with you. But we come back out live. It's going to look a little bit different because Jacob and I, as well as Travis and Kevin, are in the dark this morning.
We're in the dark. We are just like the rest of Houston, getting pounded by these winds, by the rain, and you see our shadows right now.
The silhouette. That's nice.
So this is kind of what the rest of Houston is experiencing, except we have some backup generation that's keeping our signal on. Want to show you the latest view from Galveston, where the power is also out, and the wind is coming almost straight at the camera right now out of the south, and that is pushing a big surge up into Galveston Bay. We'll show you the new storm surge numbers that have just came in. Kevin, I've seen some spots get up to 6 feet of storm surge right now.
And Travis, it's been all morning there in Galveston, and the scene has looked just like that. It has been relentless all morning long, and they're not done yet. Look at those bands still feeding into Galveston, coming right off the bay, still fueling that storm.
And the thing about Galveston is you're not going to get into the eye. You're just going to stay in the windy and rainy part of this storm for the rest of this morning. The eye, though, is making progress now. Things are settling down across most of Fort Bend County, except around Katy. You still got some very strong winds there rotating through around Cinco Ranch. Old Katy also as well getting pounded, and so is the city of Houston. Across Houston and Harris County, we've got a solid 1 to 2 hours left of this very intense wind and rain that is coming through. The eye wall right now is hitting the southwest corner of Loop 610, and it looks like, Kevin, we are going to be getting into that worst part of the eye wall right here at ABC 13. This radar view, it's our Doppler wind mode. It shows us what's moving away or towards the radar beam. All those color codes that you see indicate strong winds. And I'm going to do a little sample here, Kevin. Take a look now. This is the radar that's detecting winds of over Brazoria and Galveston counties, 85 to 95 miles per hour. Over Harris County, 64 in Katy, 72 on the West Loop, 86 miles